Well, it's not spotless, but it, well, I can still feel that imperfection there. That rust really did a number on that, scoring it. But I think we're going to be okay. Alright, so, oh my god, that song's horrible. Alright, so the first bearing, since these bearings are double-sided seals, it doesn't matter which way they go on. But I think I'll have the bearing number face out. Actually, these are marked with the size on both sides. Put this in the press. Alright, played around with some packings and different combinations and was able to get these both on. What I did was I pressed this one down as far as I could get it, and then I had this sleeve on there, and I pressed this bearing on top of it, and so then I had another stack of old bearings and packings on here and was able to press on this inner race right here, keeping pressure off the outside, and that would transfer the pressure to this spacer, which would transfer it to the inner race on the lower bearing and got it fully seated. So now that's all set. So now I just got to get this into this bore. Actually, this is going to be a piece of cake now that I look at it, because that's got a shoulder that's sitting on. So if I put this in this way and I press it in the press on this top here, that shoulder is going to be only pressing on the inner race, which is going to be transferring its load to this spacer, and that's going to transfer the force to the other bearing's inner race. That's not what I want. No. Nope, because then this bottom bearing is going to be, I'll be exerting force. The opposing force will be on the outside of the bearing as it tries to slide in that bore, while I'm putting force in the inner bearing. So I don't want that. What I want is I want to be able to push this down in here. I want to be able to push this down in here without actually putting force on the inner race. So well, it's going to be a trick. Yeah, I probably should have put this bearing in. I probably should have put this bearing in all the way down to the bottom first. Now I don't see any way I can get this in there without putting force on this that I didn't want to. Because luckily that is not a tight press. Just find an eye spot and keep knocking this in. Let's see if I can. Yeah, you got an idea. Well, so this was my great idea. It worked fairly well up until this point. Problem is now I'm getting to the point where the top of that bearing is flush with the top of the bearing is flush with the bore. So as far as I can go with those. Oh, isn't that nice? These Chinese bearings, they're not whisper quiet. They've got a little bit of a noise to them. Not like the ones I took out, but I'm unimpressed. Okay. I got it in. I did what you're not supposed to do, which is I just put it in the press, used my plates that had the half circle holes in them, and that let this pass by as this was fully supported, and I pushed this down. So I put pressure on the bearings in the process, which is not what I should be doing, but this wasn't a really tight press fit, and the only reason it was sticking so bad was because I wasn't pushing it in straight. That's why I do one C-clamp and it'd pop in, and the other one because I was kind of like cocking it. But putting it in the press and doing a nice straight press, it actually went in pretty easily. I didn't have to put a lot of force on it, so I don't think I compromised those bearings. These do sound a lot better than what was in there. So, and just the fact that grease was so contaminated, I'm happy with my decision to replace these. So now I got to put that clip back in using my wonderful new pliers. Actually, I actually think these pliers are pretty decent. I think they're just designed for even larger clips than this one. Oops. It's always easy to put these in, I think. Now that I said that, let's see how much trouble I have. Oh, those damn teeth actually interfere with that clip. The ears on that clip. I guess I gotta put that clip in before I push that. So I have to put those bearings in. Because I was supposed to put the bearings in the housing first and then push the shaft through the whole thing after the clip's installed. Shoot. There ought to be a law. I wonder if I can sneak it underneath there. Well, first I gotta see if I can get these pliers out without this whole clip just popping right out. You know, I gotta put this over on the table where I get that. Oh. The shop crane's in the way, and the Vernon lathe is sitting on it. So I'm not gonna be moving that over there. Yeah, alright, the battery's dying, but I was able to get this clip snapped in. I removed the pliers, and that gave me enough clearance to just tap at an angle and get it to pop in underneath the teeth there. So now it's back together. Just going to put the key back in here, and then I can start reassembly of this thing. Alright, it's been a few days since I was down here messing with the mill, and I'm actually at the point now where I could start putting together all of the bearings and everything back together up in the head here. But what's been bothering me is the noise that I get when I turn the spindle down here, indicating to me that the bearings in the spindle need some attention. And I've been hesitant to do anything about it because I've basically been kind of scared to take it all apart, not knowing what I'm doing. But I did some reading up on it, and I actually don't think it's that hard to do. So I'm real tempted to change those out, because the noise I'm hearing from here tells me that a lot of the noise I'm hearing when it's running is actually these bearings down in here. So I'm going to get the camera in really close and give it a spin and see if you can't pick that up with the camera. And just to give you an idea, when I do it, it actually sounds like it's up in here. So I'm thinking, it looks like I can see a bearing down in there in the top of the quill. That's about here. And that seems to be the one that's really noisy. And I'm wondering whether or not water got down in there. Can't quite see it. You know what? Radio Shack is going out of has filed bankruptcy, and they've been closing a lot of their stores. And I stopped at my local store today, and I picked up a flashlight that is the brightest LED flashlight I've ever seen, and it was supposed to be $50, and I got it for $12.50. I'm gonna go get it now. Alright, I was having trouble with the camera because the video card was filling up. Anyways, so what I had done was I was looking down here with my fancy new flashlight, and it looks to me like there's some sort of special spanner nut, but I can't imagine any way you could get that out from this top. And I can see how the quill moves up and down, so I think the way you take this apart, there's another special retaining nut on the bottom here that, from what I was reading online, I think may also have to do with actually maybe controlling some of the preload on the bearing. I don't know. And there's nothing in the instructions that I have telling you how to remove the bearings and change the bearings. But there are instructions on how to remove the quill. I can't quite be sure if I understand them fully, but I do believe it has to do with first removing this vernier scale, which is right here, I think. So I think the first step is I've got to remove this little thing here. And I think when I remove this, I'll be able to get to those two Allen head cap screws and remove this little block. Excuse me. And then I think that what that lets me do is that lets me actually run the quill all the way down so that it disengages the rack and actually pull the whole quill and assembly out through the bottom. Now they actually say to move the knee all the way down and the saddle all the way to the rear so that you have enough clearance to get this thing to come out, because you've got this spline shaft. So this thing is this long, about that long. So you can imagine that's going to be pretty long, but thinking the other possibility is I could probably just tilt the head more. But for starters, I got to get this thing off, and even though this is only a little thumb screw, it's way tight. Alright, so now with that little block out, supposedly I can wind this whole quill all the way down and it'll literally come out of there. Now I gotta caution you, this is very important. So I'm gonna unlock the quill. Uh-oh, Mama's really mad. When you're called by your mother multiple times and you don't come down. Alright, so anyways, you'll notice when I let this go, the quill retracts automatically. This is spring loaded, and that spring has to be powerful enough to be able to lift the weight of this quill assembly, which is probably pretty heavy. I mean, it's pretty substantial. It's a pretty substantial hunk of steel there. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because what's going to happen is this is only going to come out so far. It's going to disengage from the rack, and then this whole thing's going to be able to come out the bottom. Once it comes out the bottom, all of that weight and everything will be disengaged from this spring in here. And if you let the handle go, the handle will do this, only very fast and very violently, and if your hand's anywhere near it, you're going to get a really bad smack on the knuckles or something. You could get hurt or your face anywhere near there. So it's important to realize that this action right here is going to be sped up and amplified once there's nothing to stop it. So I want to be careful to let this go slowly. But right now I gotta get this knee down. Bring the saddle to the rear. Alright, it's just about vertical there. So that just slipped out. Luckily I had my hand underneath it, so I didn't realize I had gone down past that point, but I did. So now, see, if I let this handle go, it would be violent, so carefully unwinding this handle. And that should do it. That was 2 full revolutions on the handle. So I'm going to keep that in mind when I'm putting this back together. Just like that, the quill's out. Now I can move over to the workbench and we can get a good look at the anatomy of this puppy. Alright, so I got it here on the bench under some good light, and one of the things I noticed is that this rack here, rack toothed area and around it, looks like it was pretty liberally greased, but the grease that's on there now looks almost like it's a combination of, I don't know if that's oil and grease in there. It looks like mud, but of course it's not. It's just, so I'm going to want to clean all that off and apply new grease when I put it back together. The instructions with the mill talk about greasing the quill by lowering the quill all the way down to the stop when I have that stop screwed on, and through that slot where that vernier was, you'll be able to see this, and apparently that's how you're supposed to get the grease in there, and I think that's to grease this spline shaft. I'm not quite sure exactly what's supposed to lubricate this. This looked more like it was all oil that I wiped off of here. I'm not sure. But getting to what retains the bearing, this is what you couldn't see. There's this big nut right here. So obviously there's a special spanner. I had one spanner like that. I can't find it right now. But basically it would be a wrench that would have 2 prongs like this, and the pins on it would face that way, and that would go right in there. I think the one I had wouldn't be the right size anyways, and also it's clear to me from looking at this that somebody's been beating on this using the old punch to turn that method. Now this is the back of the quill that faces the body of the machine, so that you don't normally see this unless you get your head up and behind there and look. So a common mistake I can imagine people making is trying to turn this without releasing this little Allen screw, which is a locking nut, which is on the back side. So you don't see it if you're not looking for it, if you don't know it's there. And the only reason I know it's there is because I read in a forum about somebody mentioning that if there's one there, so I guess maybe on some mills it's there and some mills it isn't. Whether or not they mean on some Wells Index it's there and some it isn't, or whether or not they mean on like the Bridgeports or something, maybe there's a similar nut like this that comes off. I don't know, never had a Bridgeport. Alright, bound to get the right size eventually. There it is. Good thing that didn't fall off the... Alright, so now with that off, this should actually unscrew. How tight that is, I wonder. Now, try just with this small, easy hammer first, just to see how tight this is. Well, that's not tight at all. One guy who did this on his mill and had this apart, or was actually wanting to tighten this nut, he talked about how his bearings were really noisy. But then he found that this nut was loose, and that when he tightened the nut, the noise went away. But his concern was whether or not he really fixed the problem, or whether or not he was just causing another potential problem down the road. Another guy talked about that he talked to somebody at Wells Index, and the guy told him that that nut's supposed to be, this nut right here is supposed to be, quote, quite tight. In other words, I don't think there's a torque specification they have anywhere for this thing. There's a lot of garbage in there. I think my huge channel locks are out in the truck. Well, actually, these look like they fit. A lot easier than playing around with that thing. Should have put these gloves on before I started, but my hands aren't filthy yet. I think that's loose enough. I can actually grab it with my fingers if it was dirty. Nah, not quite there yet. Well, no, I've got that locking screw all the way out. Turns, then sticks, then turns, then sticks. Fine threads on that. Wow. You know what I see in there? Rust. Oh, that smells nasty. That's nasty. Peter, that's nasty. Alright. Taking the nut out from here would make me think that I could be able to now maybe get this to go out this way. Guess that's my first mistake to think that, huh? Nope. Okay. There's got to be a way to get this bearing out. There's what looks to be a different colored... Yeah, there's some sort of a bushing here. That it's got like a bronze color to it. So that would tend to indicate to me that that slides off of this. Well, maybe you do have to take this. See, there's a nut on here. I don't know if you can see it. It's a heck of a spanner in there, which would be a piece of cake to probably get one of these on if it wasn't down inside here. Which is why I thought maybe that came out this direction. But, cleaned off so I can stop touching that area and transferring this goop to everything. Well, judging from the herd of cattle I just heard running upstairs, I think the wife just called the boys to supper, which means I'm going to get the call in a minute. And I'm sure she's going to want to watch a movie tonight, or actually, we're watching the series The Wire. It's an older HBO series that we never watched. We heard such good things about it, we decided to check it out. Now we're hooked on it. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Steve, you should probably get a dirtier rag. Guess it wouldn't hurt to whack this with a dead blow mallet. Figure that won't hurt anything. Oh yeah, that's coming out. See? Alright, thanks. Told you. That just went back in. How the heck? Heck did I do that? Stupid. Let's try this.